Hello and welcome to the Athletic NBA Show. I'm Dave DeFore and it's Friday, so that means it's Nerder, she wrote. Joining me as they do each and every week, Mo DeKill and Seth Partnell. What's up, guys?
Not a whole lot, Dave. We're just rounding to the last week of basketball, baby.
See, this is where you're wrong. There is a lot going on. This is the most exciting end of the regular season since I started covering the league, which is not actually that long. It's only 7 years, but still the most exciting finish to a regular season in the short amount of time I've been covering. So I mean, there's a lot going on. I mean, I understand what you mean, but I am like, even on my nights off, guys, I'm checking the standings. This is actually a lot of fun.
That part is true. We do have the closest we've ever had it. But like I'm not going to be tuning in to.
Well, I know you're not as impressed.
Orlando and Washington tomorrow or tonight, whenever you're listening to this, folks. But it is good basketball that we're getting down the stretch.
Yeah, Seth, are you having a good time right now, or what?
I am having a good time. I'm also having a good time knowing I'm going to be on vacation this time next week. So just getting my ducks in a row, or I guess my mice in a row since I'm headed to Disney.
Oh, yeah.
No, you still could have done Ducks, Donald Ducks, man.
Yeah.
You didn't have to go with the vermin.
Still could have gone with the duck. Well, we decided that it's been too long since we had a mailbag episode. So we went to good old twitter.com while it's still alive. And we threw out the call for questions and we got some good ones. So I want to jump right in. Friend of the program from The Athletic, Mike Vorkanoff asks, and this is a loaded question because he already knows how I feel about this. Should we, and we meaning the NBA, get rid of charges from the NBA? Guys, I think that offensive fouls and charges should be separated, right? Like, let's just do that. There is an offensive foul. If you throw that arm out there, if you drop the shoulder, you do any of those things, it's an offensive foul. But the charge, I'm assuming Mike is referring to guy slides over, the Kyle Lowry special, slides over from out of the play, not actually making a basketball play, just getting in the way, doing something not athletic, not impressive, uninteresting, boring, injurious. Yeah, just awful. Basically, charges are the bane of my basketball existence. So should the NBA get rid of those guys?
Yes.
There we go. That's a great way to start the show.
There's actually an interesting lesson in sort of unintended consequences here, because they were sick of, the guy waiting all the way under the basket and taking a charge. So we get the charge circle, which, well, they can't wait all the way under the basket. And now what we have is plays where a guy is driving to the basket, jumps, and the other guy jumps towards him to get outside of this like kind of imaginary line of the charge circle to undercut him farther away from the basket. And it like, so you're there in time and in position up that you could jump up and try to block the shot, but instead, because of this rules in place, you're going to jump at his knees.
Well, I have a theory on this, and our next question is actually a good place for me to set up my theory. This comes from Zian1 on Twitter, who listened to our podcast with Corey Jez, the data pod where we talked about the new tracking data. And they ask, leaving interesting defense and offensive questions aside for now, how long until that new data tracking system is used to complain about foul calls? Now, I think it's going to be immediately, and here's why. I watched Rudy Gobert get a reputation travel call in a game. I actually think that sometimes the stuff is so fast, they call things if they look weird. Well, that looks different. I mean, think about like the Euro step. The Euro step used to, the guys who go really slow used to get called for travels all the time. The gather step, all of these rule changes that have come about. And so now, if anything just looks wrong, they blow the whistle.
Yeah, I don't. First, I just want to go back to the charge thing.
Yes.
We have a serious problem with there was a play in the Cleveland-Atlanta game where Donovan Mitchell was driving down the lane, and I think it might be the play Seth is talking about in particular, but Clint Capella, instead of trying to block the shot, jumped out of the charge circle to draw the charge. This isn't Kyle Lowry. This is a center. This is a rim protecting center who we talk about as a guy who can block shots quite often. trying to draw the charge. Like, that's just not a basketball play. What I look about it with charges is, okay, rotate over and be a traffic cone. Like, that's basically be in the way type stuff. It's a terrible play. It's a bad basketball play, everything like that. To your point about this will help, this will make people complain more in the reputation calls and the if it looks awkward, it was probably wrong. More often than not, that's the right rule, Dave.
Sometimes it is. I
More
know.
often than
Sometimes
not,
it
if it's
is.
awkward, it's like, yeah, that, there's going to be occasions where it's not. But hey, that didn't
By all
look
means,
right.
call a travel on Rudy Gobert anytime he picks up his dribble and is moving outside of the 3-point line. That's okay with me. But it was not a travel. Very much not a travel. It just looked goofy. And so this is my theory, but it's the same with charges, right? It's, well, that looked right. It was, but it's not. I mean, the bang bang plays, just get rid of them. Take them out. Take out the incentive for guys to get in the way. But Seth, the tracking data is 100% going to be used to criticize officials.
So do you know that the tracking data that the teams all get as part of the agreement with whoever the provider is, do you know that when it first came out, the referees were included in the tracking data? Because the tracking is like, there's three people in shirts. Like, these are people on the floor that are like just as easy to track from via the technology as the players. They're not using wearables or anything like that. It's literally optically tracking who is on the floor. That used to be, and then it was taken out. Do you know why?
Because everybody was complaining too
Because
much.
Mark Cuban was bitching too much about everything about the refs based on, like, look, he's standing in the wrong spot here and blah blah blah. So
they're going to have to exempt them from the tracking data,
or they're not going to they're going to not include that as part of the fee. Like, I'm sure the league has it and uses it to analyze positioning and stuff like that, but whether or not that they should pass that on to teams, I don't know. But knowing how teams are going to use it, let's put it this way: it is not going to be used in the spirit of intellectual discovery.
Oh yeah, definitely
It's honestly just going to create more of a headache if you give it to the teams that way and allow them to kind of run through all of this stuff. So honestly, I'm all for them not doing it, just because, listen, teams complain on every fucking call.
Yeah.
Whether it's true or not. And
True
I think we're getting, whether we're getting to the point now where, like, you know what? First off, fuck y'all for making me side with the refs in that whole place, right? Because now we've just gone so far into that. Rudy Gobert at the end of the game with the Phoenix Suns goes on this whole rant about the referees and they're, trying to set it up one way or not. No, dude, when you set a screen, you can't throw your arms out like that and basically hold the guy. Sorry, that's been the common call for screens. I don't know, since I learned to play basketball in the old days. So, like, for the love of God, like, I'm just tired of it, Dave. Like, I don't want to give the teams, the players, the owners, whatever, more data so they can constantly continue to bitch about the refs.
Now, there is some maybe more useful bits here that would probably be not stuff that would be selectively whatever. I do think it would be interesting, and this is an answer, but not what it was not going to be my answer to another question we have coming. But I've always thought it would be useful to be able to know. I mean, in data, we can tell which ref made a call. I would like to know which position the ref is in to make a call. So who makes the, I think that would be useful to know, like, if who as the trail ref calls the most illegal screens, who is the underneath the basket ref, most often, has the most, block charge calls, or calls block charges one way or another. I feel like that would be interesting information, both from a game planning standpoint, but also just to illustrate sort of how a lot of this stuff is interpretation.
Well, and a little bit of justification when coaches get mad that referees make the wrong call, because coaches are the ones that usually are mad about that. I have been kicked. I got ejected from a game because the trail referee called an over the back on the opposite side under the basket. So that one's for the coaches.
It's funny because we'll see players in games complain that the baseline ref didn't call the foul, but the other guy did. And it's like, yo, you got the foul call, man. Just shut up.
Yeah.
I'm just tired of it. I'm sorry. Like, this is really just more me just tired of these dudes complaining. And the refs get a lot wrong. Not even a lot wrong, but they get stuff wrong.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. I don't even want to say a lot.
Hard.
You're right. This thing's a
hard.
very difficult thing to do. And it's just like, I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of all the bitching and moaning from the players. I'm tired of it from all the coaches. I'm tired of the challenges, because that's basically what the challenge is. No, you got that wrong. Sometimes they overturn it. Sometimes they don't. Some of these things are obvious. Some of them are not. All that stuff. Anybody who wants to bitch about it, give them the whistle. You do it.
Well, all right. We've hammered the referee thing. We're off that. David Savage asks, what stats do you wish were available that aren't right now? And Mo, we have this conversation in our little group chat constantly, that there's stuff that we wish we knew. And we always ask Seth to find it for us.
I am begging for, I don't know, the third year in a row that we kind of have this question. I am begging a public stats company provide us with data of teams that go on runs, who has the most consecutive runs, who has the most, most consecutive stops. I'm dying for that type of data. I just dropped an article about the Boston Celtics and Coach Mazzulla's tactics and things like that. I would have definitely have used some of that data in there. It's just not available publicly. I already had to bother Seth for some stats in that one. I didn't want to bother him for a second time with all that stuff. And I'm just saying, like, that for me, that's dominance. I have a team that I can go on a 12-2 run, and we do this regularly, and or I can get 5 stops in a row. That matters. And to be honest, this all came from, for me at least, is Darvin Ham calls it kills. I don't know if that came from you guys in Milwaukee, Seth. This all came to me from a coaching clinic where Rick Carlisle talked about it, where he was confident his teams would win games. They had an assistant coach charting it. They would win a game if they got 3 consecutive stops 7 times in a game. And that was the thing they charted and they kept track of. I don't know, what the numbers are. I don't know if it's changed since I heard that. That was back in like 2013, 14. Maybe it's changed and the number has changed. But I just found that
do it once in a game now, and you
might win. I mean,
yeah.
I dare Sacramento to just get 2 stops in a row. Sorry, low blow. But I think that's a stat. I'm just dying for that kind of data. Please, just somebody cleaning the glass, unpredictable, PvP, like whatever. Just somebody make it available so I can have it.
Seth, is there?
Yeah, no, that's
Mr. Stats guy.
No, and the thing is Mo has actually been asking for that for the entire time we've been doing the show, and I've just been too lazy to
build it.
But you don't have, but you don't have a stat. Like, you don't even run a stat website. It's a valuable stat.
Yeah. No, that's right. I think to differentiate there, like something like that is derivable from public data. Now you're just basically asking someone to get off their ass. Wondering that for me, some of the stuff that I wish was more available is some of the stuff that gets us a little closer to what we had on the team side. It's just stuff that helps better identify kind of what teams are doing. We get some data on how often teams finish a play out of a pick and roll or something like that. But I want to know, I would just knowing okay, what combo of players have run the most side pick and rolls, have run the most middle pick and rolls. What player rejects the screen more? Just like all these little interesting bits about basketball. And I understand that a lot of this is sort of in the upsold package that teams get to sort of parse some of the tracking info to come out with the stuff quickly. But it seems like as we're moving towards the pose data, the more advanced version of stuff, that some of this other stuff should become more kind of in the public domain, because all of it is stuff we talk about when we talk about basketball, and just being able to this is, really among the perfect roles of stats in talking about the game is really to contextualize what we're seeing. You were talking earlier about, in the reffing, they see something unusual. Oftentimes we see something unusual, being able to look and see, oh, wow, he doesn't usually do that, does he? And see, no, actually, that's only the third time he's rejected the screen all year. Like that would be, there's there's a specific thing that I think came up in one of our playbacks, Mo, which is something that someone observed. Caitlin Cooper observed that from watching Karis LeVert a lot with the Pacers, that he loves to reject screens going to his left, but he can't make passes going to his left off the dirt. Like that's like just being able to look up to find stuff like that would be just super cool and very useful, and let us use stats to talk about basketball.
Yeah, and there's a couple other things I'd like. I mean, granted, I just made my massive plea, and by the way, I understand, but for the first 15 minutes of the podcast, I've just been whining the whole time, so I apologize.
It's a very, very special episode for Mo.
Well, I'm just annoyed, and that's what tends to happen. But I think the other stuff that would be kind of helpful, and in simple ways, but the NBA.com stats tracking stuff, the play type tracking. Can I just get the pick and roll all in one, and then have it parsed out ball handler and roller and things like that? Like there's small things like that I think matters. I like your idea, Seth, of it kind of individualized in terms of the pick and roll duos and things like that. I would almost want to go a small step further, and this one is going to get very complicated, and I don't know how it would do it, but I'd like to see more switching data and more when teams switch. Seth has brought it up a few times, and it's a great observation. The Thunder, right? They switch late. They don't switch early in the clock. They switch late in the clock. That'd actually be a really helpful tool to kind of just have that understanding of that we can show that to people, and I could explain it defensively of look, this is what they're doing that's different than everybody else. Instead, it's just, okay, this is what happened on a switch, boom. But actually, when you switch matters.
I think just defensive data in general, right? Like it's lagging way behind, and it's partially because defense is a team sport and offense can so often become an individual sport. That makes it more difficult to track. Like I can tell you, this guy put the ball in the basket. This guy put the ball in that guy's hands before he put it in the basket. A little bit more difficult on defense. I like screen navigation stats would be great for me. I was watching Jaden McDaniels guarding KD last night and guarding Devin Booker and watching the way he was getting around screens. And this is a natural segue to our next question.
Oh, no, guys, nope. I gotta stop.
You got one more?
I got one more thing because me, I can't stop talking.
Man.
The one more thing. Go check it out on video. To your point, Dave, about defensive tracking, it's so hard to quantify certain things. There was a great possession last night where KD denied the hell out of Anthony Edwards, would not let the Wolves get the ball in that possession by just pure luck, not pure luck, but by good defense. The Suns got to stop on that. If the Suns scored on that, KD's defensive net rating would have gone up. He would have been a negative thing, but he did his job. And I think that's something that's a very hard quantifiable thing to do in that instance. It's kind of like the Drew Holiday video and why I think he's so underrated. A lot of the stuff he does is not quantifiable. And I think that's an important aspect with defensive.
It's like a denial stat. That's actually pretty good, especially if it's a denial on a number one option. I mean, that's something that you want to know.
I mean, I think that sort of ties into something that I wish was in like the base play-by-play was some shot clock information. Like we have the game clock. Is there a reason the shot clock can't also feed into that so we know that this shot was taken with? We can kind of guess at it, but then you're left to some vagaries of when stats get entered. And then on top of that, okay, we're tracking deflections, put that in the play-by-play too. Because I like to your point, Mo, like we kind of know that like tipping the ball out of bounds, making the offense start over has value. I would like to, okay, well, we ran down the possession clock by 3 extra seconds by doing that. What's that worth? That would be that, like being able to do stuff like that would really start to help us give credit to guys who, deny a pass or make the offense slow down or whatever.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Okay, next question, guys, from Jeff Besoy. What are your thoughts on the full strength Minnesota Timberwolves? Obviously, just a couple of games with Karl Anthony Towns back. Then they were missing Anthony Edwards for a couple of games. Now, I don't know if we can say that they've been full strength because they have the flu. but they have a stomach flu going through their team. And I do think that in the game that was Wednesday night against Phoenix, they did look late in the game. They just looked slow. They looked tired. They look like a team that had the flu running through them. So I don't really know if we've got enough. I don't know if we've got enough data to make any sort of estimations. But maybe there's stuff that we can sort of piecemeal here. Number one, I think Anthony Edwards is number one option, especially late in games. This season, he has proven that that's their guy. And when they've gone away from that late in games, it has not gone well for them. And that's a concern I have about fitting Karl-Anthony Towns back in. But then Karl-Anthony Towns, hits a game-winning transition 3 against the Warriors, and you're like, well, kind of nice to have Karl-Anthony Towns out there. So what do you guys think right now about the Timberwolves, and what do you want to see out of them the last 6 games, I guess, or 5 maybe?
First of all, shouts to Carleton College's own Jeff Massoy, several years behind me. But I think that as you're saying, like some of their best stretch of the year was when Towns was hurt. They had kind of maybe shunted D'Angelo Russell off to the side, and they closed games with Edwards as the ball handler, Gobert at the center, and three versatile, switchy, lengthy guys in the other spots, whether that was some combination of Kyle Anderson, Taurean Prince, Jaden McDaniels, or whoever else. I thought that was their bet because A, it had a lineup that could guard people. B, that like everyone kind of knew what the plan was. And now that Towns is back, it seems like they're back to try to sort of, is it me? Is it you? Are we what, how? And there's a little bit of that hesitation and everyone's maybe trying to do a little too much. And that's whether it's Towns taking shots, whether it's Gobert trying to set the best screen in the history of the world to get someone open and then gets called for an offensive foul, or whether it's Edwards trying to hit an 8-pointer when they're down 8 with about 6 minutes left in the game. Where they had a secret in that game we're talking about. They got about 7 offensive rebounds in 3 possessions. I don't think they scored because they just kept taking terrible, jacked up shots.
Well, it was the refs set. The refs were trying to get the Suns.
But it's like, if we just make one of these, the game will be tied. It's like, no, you'll still be down 5.
No, it's the hardest thing with this Wolves team is they've just not had enough time together to figure it out. And I mean, just go back to the beginning of training camp. They were resting Rudy Gobert coming off the EuroLeague championships. They were Karl-Anthony Towns got really sick. Remember, like he lost a ton of weight, all of that stuff. So they basically lost training camp. Anthony Edwards came into camp fat and out of shape and really loved Popeye's chicken, apparently. And then, through even the early runs of that stuff, you had a situation where then Cat goes down with an injury. And they struggled right away off the bat. Then Cat goes down with an injury. And we all kind of said it, like, it'll be very interesting to see what this team does now and how they come together, because one less piece to really integrate, and the rise of Naz Reid and everything that's rolling through it. And then now Cat comes back so late in the season. I don't know what to think of this team at this point, because I don't think they know in that sense. It's just because they've not had any time together to really figure this whole stuff out. And I think that's the ultimate challenge for them going into it. So, I hate to have this answer, but like, I don't know.
No, I mean, I don't know is where we kind of live, guys. Like this is this show, right? Like if you needed a synopsis, they don't know, but they're trying to figure it out. And I think that when you look at this team, I see more balance with Karl-Anthony Towns off the court than I do when he's on. Part of that is the defense. They just play better defenders in that spot when it's not Karl-Anthony Towns. The Naz Reid and Rudy Gobert lineups have actually been really good. They've run out Chris Finch has run out some incredibly gigantic lineups that have worked. Jaden McDaniels, Taurean Prince, Gobert, and Naz Reid with a guard, and sometimes no guard. I mean, it's really fascinating what they've got from a personnel perspective. But then Karl-Anthony Towns, like, we know what he is. I don't know. I don't know what to think of him with Karl-Anthony Towns. I have a good sense of who they are without him, though.
I have a crazy idea, which you can't do now at this late in the season for them. Play all 3 of them. Let's see what happens. Go super big. Coach, why not?
The thing is,
just get crazy with it.
With Naz Reid and Karl Anthony Towns being able to shoot and put it on the floor a little bit, like they can attack closeouts, both good enough passers. I mean, you could do that. I mean, what if it's...
I have a lot of questions defensively and concerns on that end. There's no question about it. But you know what?
They would get every rebound.
Let's get crazy.
Although,
man.
no, they wouldn't, because I did see Torrey Craig sneak in and steal some offensive rebounds from those guys last night. So I don't know. What do you think, Seth?
Man, so that's interesting. You say they get every rebound. That was actually one of their problems, as you said, is they gave a ton of offensive rebounds.
But again, I think that they've got the flu. So I'm trying not to let that game color too much for me. Because I do want to give them the human benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. No, it's what Mo said. Like, they just haven't had enough time. And this is not a roster that, like, there's some lineup combinations, some players. Like, part of the reason why we're a little bit bullish on the Suns is Kevin Durant is not for a that level of player. You don't actually have to do all that much to integrate him.
Right. So
he just kind of plug him in and then, we got Kevin Durant over there. That's nice. Whereas if you've got, Rudy is a pretty specific player. Cat is frankly a pretty specific player. Kyle Anderson's they have a lot of interesting guys. The problem with having interesting guys is, how do we make them all work together? And you kind of, you can have some theories about how it might work, but until you actually see it, you're going to have to adjust. And when have they had a chance? This is probably the first time all season that they've had all of Anderson, Gobert, and Towns available. And those are three of their five most important players.
It's just tough, man. This is one of those things. This is why when people say to me the regular season doesn't matter, and even when teams think that, I'm like, yo, no, it absolutely does for teams. This is time to experiment and figure some stuff out. Now you're late in the season, and they couldn't. This is just one of those things. So they're going to go into even the offseason with questions, and they just unfortunately aren't going to be able to have the answers because they didn't have enough of their team together to really kind of figure it out. Chris Finch has done a great job considering all the challenges this team had throughout the season.
Feels like a team that might be making some sort of trade.
Today's show is brought to you by Chime. Visit chime.com/NBA show for more information. What's the first thing you do when you wake up? Is it checking up on your credit score? Yeah, I didn't think so. Well, at Chime, that's exactly what they do for you. With their secured Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card, you can start to build credit with your own money. Chime reports your payments to credit bureaus to help you build credit over time. Their members see an increase of 30 points on average. All of this with no annual fees, large security deposits, or credit checks to apply. So start your credit journey with Chime. Sign up, only takes 2 minutes, and doesn't affect your credit score. Get started at chime.com/NBA show. That's chime.com/NBA show. The Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card is issued by Stride Bank N.A. pursuant to a license from Visa USA Chime checking account and $200 qualifying direct deposit required to apply for the secured Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card. Regular on-time payment history can have a positive impact on your credit score. Impact to score may vary, and some user scores may not improve. Out-of-network ATM withdrawal fees may apply except at MoneyPass ATMs, in a 7-Eleven, or any Allpoint or Visa Plus Alliance ATM.
Steve Thomas. And this one's a big one, guys. If the 76ers falter in the playoffs early, do you think the Knicks should make a pitch for Embiid? Let's open this up and just say, if they fail early in the playoffs, and I would assume anything before the conference finals means early, you guys see Embiid maybe not being in Philly?
I think it's possible. I honestly, just because I think if that happens, and I think there's a possibility, the first shoe to drop would have to be James Harden leaving. And I know how much Embiid loves Philly and everything that's been going on there. And he's really embodied the organization and the city, and you can tell the love's there. I think it's really possible though at this point, just because, what happens, we've gone through it so many times. At a certain point, we've seen this story over and over again. I think, to answer the question, I think the Knicks are in good position. I mean, I think every team should kick the tires on it. This is a dude that's going to be one of the top 3 in the MVP voting, might even be the MVP. I think you have to have that conversation, but it all comes down to the most important thing. How do you go out in the playoffs? If you go out, you get your ass kicked in the second round by the Celtics, like get 5-1 and it's not very close. Like, yeah, I think there's a legitimate possibility. You play them tough 7-game series and it's a whatever, just a crazy scenario, then I think he sticks around. But it's going to be interesting.
What do you think, Seth?
On one hand, I don't want to go down the who's the next star to get traded. Although, at this point, Embiid has probably been a guy who's been there long enough and given enough that he maybe has earned the right to. Hey, it's not happening here. Let's we did our best, shake hands and kind of move along. So can I see that happening? Yeah. And as Mo says, like, this is, at times we've been critical of the Knicks front office, but they've put themselves in a position, to be able to, go after stars. They, it doesn't hurt that some of their young players have developed. Like, I don't know with Philly's roster, he probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but Emmanuel Quickley is probably a someone whose trade value has appreciated greatly over the course of the year, and so yeah, I think that the Knicks, who, if they want a star to even go above Jalen Brunson, obviously anyone who becomes available above a certain level, they have to.
I don't think Embiid would leave. Not this summer. They've got flexibility on the roster, like you mentioned. They could lose Harden. That maybe that's a sign and trade, and they get something back. Still have Tobias Harris. I think he would be in for a reboot. I mean, and I'm obviously projecting. He may never leave. If I were Joel Embiid, I would never leave. He's the king of Philadelphia. Why would you leave? I mean, you have an organization that's going to cater to you, treat you well. Never heard him say that he didn't like living in Philly. Like, it's not, it seems to me like it's a great place to live and work. And as long as you're going to be a top 5 player in the league, which I think Embiid should be able to for a while, he's going to have a team catering to him from every standpoint, including roster construction. So I would think this summer, yeah, the Knicks everybody should call at every opportunity, but I think it would be fruitless.
It's not for us to say like what a player's preferences should be,
Sure.
but the counterfactual is, would any of us have begrudged Damian Lillard if he'd have asked out of Portland 3 or 4 years ago?
No,
but I'll be annoyed if he does it now.
And so that is, I think the writing was on the wall that long ago in Portland that it probably was never happening at a championship level there. At least not in sort of this iteration of the team. If you get to a point now, like, again, you're a decade into your career, there's more ground behind you than there's ahead of you. I have no problem at all with the player like deciding, you know what, I want to win championships, and I don't think it's going to happen here. So we need to figure something out. I think he's super within his rights, as long as it's handled like respectfully and professionally, rather than poutily.
And Embiid has done it. Embiid has done right by the city of Philadelphia. Like, he's been completely bought in.
He's the king of Philadelphia, and I don't say that lightly. And
I'm with you, Dave, in that, like, yeah, you should never leave when you're in that instance. Kevin Garnett was the king of Minnesota, and they went nowhere. Now, this team's better. Obviously, the organization's better. They're doing much better. I like this team around them. Like, they've done a good job, and Daryl Morey has built a team around him. For me, it all hinges on, like, I don't think they have as much flexibility as you think, Dave, if Harden leaves. Even in a sign and trade, I can't imagine he's bringing that much back for you. It's going to put you in a contender. And if he leaves, and this was the best Philadelphia 76er team you've been on since you've been there, if you're Joel Embiid, you have to start looking at it. Wow, we have Thunder in LA. This is wild. Sorry, guys, I got totally sidetracked. That might be time for me to shut up.
I would just say this. Yeah, the team itself, I think Daryl Morey can't be underestimated here when it comes to retooling a roster. I mean, he retooled this one. I think he did a pretty good job.
East.
Well, I mean, but it's working, right? Like this is and by the way, so it's obviously pretty early and they're playing really good basketball. So I think that they're going to make the conference finals. They're just tough. And I think I do.
That's
I think
quite
it's
a prediction.
Wow.
I think it's Philly and I think it's Milwaukee. I think that they've got it.
If you tweeted that the day before the first day of practice before the conference finals, I think they'd bring a framed copy of that tweet out for Marcus Smart to sign at Celtics practice.
I mean, look, man, I just don't trust the Celtics right now, but we're getting early. Playoff previews coming in a couple of weeks. All right, guys, last question. And this is from Dr. Clam, Madison Mollusk, friend of the show. To honor the Kings playoff spot, what are some other light the beam style gimmicks that NBA teams looking to spice things up in the boardroom could try? I actually love this question. Number one, gives us a chance
I just got that. I'd seen the question before and I just got that. So I'm
the
sorry.
boardroom. Oh, spice things up in the boardroom. Yeah. Funny guy. Guy's a doctor, actually, in real life. So I was thinking about this question. Number one, it's a chance for us to congratulate Sacramento Kings and their fans on making the playoffs and ending the longest playoff drought in North American professional sports.
Was it only North American?
It was only North American. I
thought it was worldwide.
Well,
now I'm not.
I didn't do enough
impressed.
research. I mean, you know how many soccer leagues, and
Well, they don't do playoffs, so
that's true. That's true. So, anyway, congratulations to the Kings. But guys, do you guys have any variations on lighting the beam? I have one for the Orlando Magic. If you guys want me to start,
Please start.
Okay. David Copperfield, after every home win, comes out and does a series of tricks, and it escalates throughout the season. And so as they win more and more games, the tricks are bigger and bigger and bigger until Epcot Center disappears. David Copperfield, because they win 50 games or something like that.
I have a twist on that one.
No,
is instead of how they have the beam on top of this, like they have instead of that they have like David Copperfield in one of those escape boxes.
Yeah,
and he can only escape if they win.
So what happens if they lose? If they lose, or is there
stuck in the box until the next time they win?
Yeah, so
if they go on a 5-game losing streak or something.
So we're kidnapping David Copperfield for the Orlando Magic. I don't know. Honestly,
that's a lot of work for Copperfield there.
Lighting the beam is kind of perfect for numerous reasons. Number one, it's a community builder. You can look, if you live there, you can look outside and you see the light, and it's going to make you think about the Kings. Sort of a reward to the fans. It becomes such a fun thing. It's funny because I think we all were like, oh, that's an idea. And now I think we universally love this idea. I don't know if you can repeat it. If you're looking for something, if you're looking for something, you're not going to find that. Yeah, I think Memphis is with their wrestling gimmicks that they run all year. They are probably the best game ops folks. I mean, because that's really who are making these decisions. But the Sacramento beam is just it's a home run. I don't know how anybody else could even come up with anything close.
There's no way we could really top it. I think
because the beam goes straight up, so you can't.
Well, also,
I hate you, Seth. I know you help me with stats, but I hate you sometimes. Like, oh my God.
In Philly, they ring the bell, right? And that's cool, but like they do that before the game. You need it's like a victory cigar or something like that. So
I want I want the Toronto Raptors to have a dinosaur rise up on top of their the roof whatever they win. So it just looks like the dinosaurs has risen. I'm not creative enough. I'm sorry, Dr. Clam. Trust me, if I had any smarts in terms of marketing, I'd probably be in a different industry. This really ain't my my flow.
No, it's I mean, as you said, Dave, the genius of this is just how simple it is. And we're you try it. Well, their mascot is what does the beam have to do with Sacramento? It's just a purple thing of light.
Big Mace Windu fans.
And it was awesome. Yeah. It was awesome. It's a great idea. It's so much fun. And then you hit the button to light the beam and all of those things. I think more importantly, it's fun to have Sacramento in the playoffs. Because I'll be honest with you, I mean, how awesome would it be if somehow we get a Sacramento Lakers first round with the history and rivalry that's between these two cities in that sense? Golden State and Sacramento in the first round, with that being close, there's going to be some sort of rivalries and things like that. Like it's kind of fun in that sense. Imagine how drunk the series would be if it's Minnesota Sacramento, considering what we saw how Minnesota looked last year in the drunkiest of drunk series. Like add Sacramento into the mix and it's gonna be wild. I'm just excited to have them. To be honest, their fan base is totally worth it because they go completely nuts. They go so hard with everything. Like I'm excited to see them in the playoffs, and on top of it, having home court advantage. Like good for them. I don't believe in them much, but like good for them.
Doesn't matter.
But those games are going to be lit.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Like,
unbelievable. Love it. And the Beam was part of it. The Beam was part of that kind of rise and brought them national attention, really. Like, I think it's just one of those things. Like, that was genius.
It's an example of like, this is like a good vibe story all the way around, and the players embraced the Beam. It's just organic. And I don't think that you can repeat it. You would have to have something like organic happen. You know, it's an octopus on the hockey rink. You know,
there are other things that are happening, and some of them are a little more like, you know, their teams have done sort of the defensive player of the game chain, which is like a little bit ripped off from like football teams doing the turnover chain and stuff like that. But still, like that's the kind of thing that, like you say, it's a good vibe thing. One of the trends that I actually kind of like, and this isn't necessarily like a outward facing thing, I really like when teams like crash the post game interview, and it's just like
the Thunder have been great about that.
The other like the you know, Jalen Williams, hipster rookie of the year,
J-Dub
gets a tip in at the buzzer. Mo's mad at me again. I can see him. Gets a tip in at the buzzer, and like
it's a steady stream of just constantly being mad at you. It doesn't go away.
there's fair. I'm used to that actually. But then it's he's talking, and then the whole team is just suddenly behind him and just like, yeah, this is our guy. And I like that because that, you know, it's silly, it's fun, and hey, sports are supposed to be fun. So, you know, as soon as it starts to become contrived, which is why this question is kind of tough.
That's it. That's exactly why.
Yeah, you can't manufacture this. It just kind of has to.
I need behind the scenes of this. You know, Stauskas? Was it Beam? Are we doing a Beam? That's what I need. I need the documentary series from the Kings. I need to know how the Beam came about. I just want to see it.
It's like someone's like, you know what, t-shirt cannons are all right, but you know, it'd be awesome if we had one thing that had 4 barrels of t-shirt cannons. Yes. And then a Bucks game ops person, you know, it'd be cooler if we had 2 different we had an anti-aircraft gun, and like that's, you know, we know how I feel about t-shirt guns.
Need a t-shirt.
Now we're gonna have fighter jet t-shirts that are dropping them off.
Oh, we're already doing drone drops, right? Like I know that they're, you know, at All-Star they did the paratroop t-shirt drop. We definitely are not far off from the drones.
The parachute stuff from the ceiling is creepy as hell to me because it looks like a bunch of jellyfish, and I think jellyfish are freaky. So
I'm good to know how to scare you with that.
Yeah.
All right, that's gonna do it for the mailbag, Mo. Unless you got one more thing here. All right,
yeah,
but he does have
go
one
check
Mo
out
thing
one Mo
over
thing
on Twitter.
Go read my article on the Boston Celtics on Bleacher Report about Joe Mazzulla being an X factor for them. I'm plugging all my stuff, Dave.
That's right. Thank you guys for listening. This has been Nerder, She Wrote, on the Athletic NBA Show.